person once told me they stopped taking their statins. Not because of a side effect though, but because they couldn't tell anymore who was being honest. The person telling them to take it, or the person telling them not to. But here's what neither side wants you to notice. They're often pointing at the same study. One picks the number that looks enormous, the other picks the story that feels terrifying. Neither hands you the one thing you need to actually decide. So today, no politics. I'll explain exactly what a statin does in a cell, the real size of the benefit, and the real size of the risk, in numbers that don't feel like a burden. And the single idea that lets you read every single statin headline without feeling like you're being played. 2 stories about statins, and you have probably heard them both. One is that statins have prevented an enormous amount of heart attacks. 2 is that statins are an overprescribed crutch with a side effect list as long as your limbs. But here's the thing that keeps the fight alive between the two. It's that both are built on true facts. Neither are lying to you. The issue is that both are holding up half the picture that best suits it. So let's start with the fact that neither bothers to give you. A statin does not scrub cholesterol out of your blood. Instead, it tricks your liver into pulling it out. That one sentence alone is the key to the entire argument. Because once you see what the drug actually does, you can see exactly where both sides start to bend the truth. Inside your liver cells, there is an assembly line that builds cholesterol from scratch, and it has one rate-limiting step by an enzyme called HMG-CoA reductase. And HMG-CoA reductase sets the pace for everything which comes after it. A statin plugs into that enzyme to slow it down. The first one was found in mold by a researcher in the 1970s combing fungi. Now here's the elegant part, the reason it tricks your liver. When the cell can't make as much cholesterol, it reaches out and pulls more LDL from the bloodstream to compensate. In the first video on this channel, I showed you why that LDL number is more dangerous than it looks. The statin is the drug built to drag it down. So the mechanism is real and it is elegant, which makes the next part worse, because "it works" is the most abused phrase in this whole fight. And the number they use to prove it is a magic trick. Do statins actually work? Yes, and here's the trick. Gather all the big trials. For every unit you drop someone's LDL cholesterol, you cut their risk of a major cardiovascular event by about a fifth. That's roughly 21%. It's a real robust number. The problem is that 21% of what? It becomes a relative number. It tells us the risk reduction, but it doesn't tell us what the baseline risk is, and that's the main issue. Because risk varies from person to person, and that always translates into variations in intervention effectiveness. So take the same data and ask the absolute question. Out of everyone treated, how many were actually spared? And in one large analysis, it showed that the death rate dropped from 9.7% to 8.5%. Same study with 2 different framings. The first being it cut your risk by a fifth, the other being 1 in 100 people over 5 years. But both are true. Now, the number that settles it, and the number you need to learn, it's the number needed to treat. The number needed to treat is the number of individuals that need to participate in an intervention for just one person to benefit. So let's take our 21% and apply it to a high-risk population. That will yield a number needed to treat in the low numbers. But if we take the 21% and apply it to a low-risk population, the number can be in the hundreds, thousands, or possibly higher. If reading a number this way is new to you, that's the whole point of this channel. Subscribe and the next one will find you. So that's how the benefit gets oversold, by quoting a number that never shrinks. Now watch the same exact trick run in reverse, used by the people who say you should never take a statin. And if you're the person who was handed this prescription and it's still sitting in a drawer somewhere because the side effect profile got to you before anyone could explain the numbers, you're not being irrational. You were given something to act on and never given the one thing that tells you what it means for you. But this next part is the one that does. This half of the story isn't made of nothing, so give it the same honesty. The headline fear is muscle symptoms. The most revealing study on it gave people who'd quit statins a rotating sequence of bottles. Some months a statin, some a placebo, and some nothing, and had them score symptoms daily, blind to which was which. The symptoms were real, but about 90% of that symptom burden showed up on the placebo months too. So the suffering was genuine, and mostly caused by the act of taking a pill you expect to harm you, not by the molecule of the medication. About half of people restarted their medication once they saw their own data. But be fair to the limits here, because it's a small study, and it enrolled people whose symptoms have started within a couple weeks. It does not erase the entire side effect profile, but it reframes the biggest one. Then we have the one that isn't nocebo. The question everyone actually asks: do statins cause diabetes? The honest answer is yes, modestly. Statins raise the risk of type 2 diabetes by about 9% in relative terms, more at higher doses. Now, put it in absolute terms, the same discipline we used earlier for the benefit. Roughly one new diabetes diagnosis for every 3 major cardiovascular events prevented. It's measurable harm, but for the people that is indicated, the benefit outweighs the risk. But now see what just happened. The anti-statin story that we were just fed as a true 9% or a true ache is served with no denominator. Just like what happened earlier with the benefit of statins and that 21% without the baseline risk. It's the identical crime to the marketing. Same trick, but pointed the other way. And to be completely clear, nothing here is a reason to stop your statin on your own. If you've already had a heart attack or a stroke, the math isn't close and the benefit is large. And any change belongs in a conversation with your own physician, not in a comment section or in a discussion with me, or any other YouTuber for that fact. So both numbers are real, and both sides hand them to you stripped of the one thing that makes them mean anything, that one denominator. There's a single idea that puts it back, and it's the thing that decides whether a statin is right for you or not. Here's the idea that dissolves the whole argument. The relative number, the fifth, is a property of the drug. It barely moves between people. The absolute number, what the drug does for you, is a property of you, your baseline risk. The benefit and the harm are both multiplied by how high your risk already is. High risk, and the benefit dwarfs the harm, and it's not even close. Low risk, and both shrink towards each other, that the decision to take a statin becomes genuinely difficult. So the answer to, should I take a statin, is not a simple yes or no. It's that it depends on a number neither side of the story calculates in front of you. You don't need to ask your doctor to prove statins work. You need the one question that reorganizes the whole conversation. What is my actual baseline risk? And what does this drug do to it in absolute terms for me? That turns a whole political conversation into a personal calculation. And that conversation belongs with your physician, who can see your whole picture. It isn't malpractice, and it isn't a conspiracy. The system speaks in relative terms because they're stable, functional, easy to use, and fit. The translation into your absolute risk is the work the appointment rarely has time for, but you can still ask for it anyways. And if everything today turned on your baseline risk, the one number neither side will calculate for you, then the obvious next question is what actually sets that number in the first place? 3 of the numbers that decide it are sitting in the first video on this channel. and most physicals measure exactly one of them.